What's happening? Thanks for joining me as always. It is much appreciated on this Monday. We'll get to the Celtics in a minute, but we actually start with some Patriots news over the weekend from Mike Reese. Just wanted to touch on this. Mike Reese, ESPN.com, wrote that Cole Strange tore the patellar tendon in his left knee. So we now know what is wrong with Cole Strange. Up until this point, it was unknown. We had no idea. Nothing was reported. No specifics behind the injury. But Mike Reese, who, as we all know, is very well plugged in, says that Strange tore his patella tendon in his left knee. The full recovery, if you look at the patellar tendon, is 6 months to a year. So Strange got injured in December. As we know, we just went through mandatory minicamp, middle of June. So we're about 6 months after the injury. Strange was MIA at minicamp, doing nothing, not seen. There was that report a few weeks ago from Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network saying that Strange would be out at least until the middle of the season. Middle of the season would bring you to late October, early November, which would make a lot of sense. The torn patellar tendon, again, 6 months to a year for full recovery. If Strange gets back on the field late October, early November, we're talking about 10, 11 months since the injury occurred last December. And we would all wonder if it's just a wasted season at that point for Strange. And how can you feel confident about his ability to continue to play football at a high enough level with the injuries that he has sustained already early in his career? So I just wanted to make sure that we gave you that information off the top because it's the most newsworthy thing about the Patriots over the past couple of days. We now know what the injury is to Cole Strange. We now know what the usual recovery time is. And now we know Ian Rappaport's report going back a few weeks ago makes a hell of a lot of sense in the context of the injury, of the timeline, and when we should expect Strange to be back. So I would be surprised if we see Cole Strange anytime before October. So we'll see how it all unfolds, but it does feel like the most likely scenario is that Cole Strange's season will be a waste. Who knows if the Patriots even bother activating him to allow him to play the last few games of the season. We know Sidy Sow has moved over to the left guard spot. Left guard is where Sow played in college, so that is his more natural position. If the Patriots roll out their best five and Sidy Sow is playing well at left guard and whoever's playing right guard, if they're playing well, whether it's Owenu or Robinson or Leverett or whoever, I don't think the Patriots are going to muck up their offensive line situation to shoehorn Strange back into the O-line. I don't see that happening, especially given the fact that Bill Belichick is no longer here. Strange was a Belichick pick. So there's really not the necessity from the front office to, quote-unquote, prove they were right with Strange. I would not be surprised whatsoever if Strange is a complete non-factor this entire season. That when we get to October, November, they know that they have a left guard in Sidy Sow. They have figured out the right side, and there's absolutely no reason to play Cole Strange the rest of the year. And we're not even talking about their record. So I don't know if we'll see Cole Strange this season. And I'm not going to relitigate, bring back the whole draft and going in the first. We all know how that went. We all know it hasn't worked out. And it's not going to work out in 2024. We'll get back to the Patriots in a little bit, so stay tuned for that. And I also want to mention that somebody, I think it was Sheldon in the comments section last week, said, hey, can you throw some timestamps in the podcast description so if we don't want to listen to the Celtics stuff, we can jump ahead. Great idea by Sheldon, a big miss by me. So I'm going to try to timestamp all of these topics as we go through the podcasts moving forward so you know when you can jump to the Patriots content if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for all of it, great. I appreciate you. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. But if you're looking for just the Celtics or just the Patriots, it'll be easier for you to sift through the podcast with those timestamps. So going to be doing that moving forward for all of you. Let's get into the Celtics. The Mavericks played desperate on Friday night, and it makes all the sense in the world. They were down 3-0. Their season was literally on the line. The Mavericks played desperate. The Celtics did not. That's really the general view, the 30,000-foot view of that game on Friday night. You had one team that was desperate and played like it. You had one team that understood that they could lose 3 games and still come back and win the series in Game 7 at home, and they played like it. Thought the Celtics played tight. I thought they showed almost zero poise. I thought they played sped up because they felt like we're trying to win this right now. We're trying to win this with one play, with one possession. They were trying to score 20 points in one possession versus just chopping down the lead. They lost their patience. All of those things. It was just a team that was off the tracks, and they got off the rails relatively quickly. Rebounding, they got embarrassed. I think they were like a -10 in the first quarter rebounding-wise. Dick Leip posted this on Friday night. Boston's -21 rebound margin was its worst in any playoff game since 1974. It's worst in a finals game since 1965. Second chance points were a one-sided 16-2 in favor of Dallas. Offensive rebounds 13-4. Derek Lively himself had 7. He had 7 offensive rebounds on Friday night. Inexcusable. And yes, some of that is effort. Some of that is playing without urgency. You can't give up 13 offensive rebounds. You can't get outscored 16-2 in second chance points. You can't allow Derek Lively, one individual, to get 7 offensive rebounds on you in a finals game. It can't happen. The other part of the game on Friday night was the Celtics spacing was screwed up offensively. They were all over the joint. You had guys cutting into the driving lanes for Tatum and Brown, which made no sense. The stuff I talked about with Xavier Tillman before he showed out in Game 3, unfortunately showed up in Game 4. The lack of spacing because Tillman was in there. Dallas wasn't even paying attention to Xavier Tillman offensively. They said, have at it. If you want to take a three because we're not afraid of you. They're doing that some with Al Horford as well. Al's going to have to make him pay. He's going to have to be more active offensively, and he's going to have to make a couple of threes. And you're going to have to force Dallas to play all 5 guys defensively at the three-point line. That's how the Celtics got that 3-zip lead. That's how they will win this series. If they can go out there and create the correct spacing and get those open threes, they will win this series. So their spacing was a mess. Their execution was a mess. Defensively, they didn't defend. I talked about this all series long. You're fine with giving up 2s if you're scoring 3s. However, you're not fine giving up layup after layup after layup. You're not fine with allowing guys to just waltz into the restricted area. And that's what the Celtics did. They allowed Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and Dante Exum at times. They allowed those guys to just waltz into the restricted area, touching the paint, causing issues. And they killed the Celtics in paint points. I don't mind losing the paint point battle, but you can't lose the paint point battle by allowing Dallas all of these easy shots in the paint. And you cannot lose that paint point battle if you're also losing the three-point battle, which the Celtics did. If you're going to lose in the paint, you've got to win at the three-point line by a significant margin. That's the difference. That's the math we've talked about. The Matador defense on Friday night, just not good enough. Not even close to good enough. The transition defense was not good enough. There were times when Tatum and Brown are arguing with the officials. Meanwhile, you've got Dallas racing up the floor and getting a bucket. Inexcusable. So transition defense has to be better. They did a terrible job containing the basketball on the perimeter. They had done a terrific job the first 3 games, but they could not contain the ball. And that was mostly because they didn't have much ball pressure. The pickup points weren't there. So defensively, they were a mess. Offensively, you had a lot of one-pass possessions. Guy dribbles, one pass. That guy takes a shot. Offensive possession over. You had a lot of one-pass possessions, and you had a lot of isolation possessions. That is death for the Celtics offense. It slows things down. Their pace sucks. And all of a sudden, you've got a bunch of tough shots, one-on-one. You're driving into traffic. We saw Tatum drive into traffic. We saw Brown drive into traffic, and they weren't driving with the intention of passing. They weren't creating opportunities for their teammates. They were just driving into traffic a la 2022, turning the ball over and taking bad shots. So too much one-pass basketball, too much ISO basketball. Also, way too much low IQ basketball from everybody, even Derek White. And White is never, ever playing low IQ basketball, but he did a number of times on Friday night. JB, low IQ basketball on both ends of the floor. I mean, there was a spurt there from Brown. He drives into traffic, tries to make a shot against three guys with his left hand, misses, complains to the official. On the other end, Dallas makes a shot. Brown comes down. He ends up forcing a three, completely settles a couple of seconds into the shot clock and throws up a brick from 28 feet. Just a combination of things from Brown there, right? Low IQ basketball, trying to force the issue too much, trying to do too much, and not showing poise by arguing with the ref and not getting back transitionally. But you saw that from pretty much everybody on the Celtics. Even Al Horford, he wasn't doing the small, detailed things. So they didn't play smart. They didn't play with urgency. They didn't play with enough effort at times. They did not play with enough energy. It was just bad across the board. How bad? You could argue that Friday night was the worst game of the Celtics season. Sean Grandy posted this on Twitter. Celtics have played 100 games. Friday night, ranked 97th out of 100 on defense. Dead last on offense. So they've played 100 games. That game on Friday night ranked 97th out of 100. So what is that? What, their fourth worst game? 100, 99, 98, 97? Got to count backwards. That was the fourth worst defensive game of their season and their worst offensive game of the season. Disaster. I would say it was literally the worst game of their season from beginning to end of the game, and also from game one of the regular season all the way until game 4 of the finals. It was terrible. Burn the film. Burn the film and understand that this happens. We just saw what happened in the Stanley Cup final on Saturday night. Stanley Cup final, same kind of series, right? You have a team in Florida who was seen as the toughest team to play, talented team. They're kind of just, I wouldn't say mowing through the Eastern Conference because, you know, they played a couple of 6-game series. They didn't cruise like the Celtics cruised for the most part through the Eastern Conference. But you had Florida up 3-0. They were beating Edmonton. Edmonton looked like they were done. And what happens on Saturday night? In Edmonton, Florida gets absolutely smoked 8-1. So some of this happens, right? We've seen this movie before. Sometimes guys start thinking about the parade. Sometimes they start thinking about where they're going to hang out in the postgame. And they just want to win so badly. Sometimes you have guys who, you know, they're all out of sorts because they kind of take it for granted. Sometimes you have guys that are so focused on trying to win and trying so hard to win that they start to force things and play outside of themselves. I thought we saw a bit of both from time to time, depending on the player. We saw that lack of effort and urgency because they knew they're up 3-0, but we also saw some of the guys who were just trying too hard and forcing the issue, which took them out of their game. But this happens. It happened on Saturday night to the Florida Panthers. It happened a number of times in the history of basketball. Dan Kelly from Pat's Football Now posted this. The Celtics' 38-point loss breaks the franchise record for worst loss in an NBA Finals game. The previous record was held by the 84 Celtics, and you guessed it, the 84 Celtics won the title. I looked things up, and I found Kobe and Shaq. We forget this because it's almost a quarter of a century ago, which, yes, makes me feel old. But Kobe and Shaq's Lakers in 2000. It was their chance to close out a final series. When we think about Kobe, we think about Shaq, we think about championships, right? However, those guys up to that point, they had not won a championship. Shaq didn't have a ring. Kobe didn't have a ring. And it was the first opportunity for Shaq and Kobe to win a championship. They were up 3-1 against Indiana in 2000. And for the first time in their career with a chance to win a ring, they were on the road. They played at Indiana. Shaq and Kobe and the Lakers got eviscerated by the Indiana Pacers. They got beat by 33 in Game 5 of that series with a chance to win the title on the road. LA went back to LA. They won Game 6. They won the title. What's even more weird is that the final score of LA Indiana Game 5 in 2000 was 120-87. And of course, Friday night's final was 122-84. So we've seen this movie. We certainly all hope the Celtics do what the Lakers did in 2000, get back home and take care of business. Don't forget to give us that like, all the thumbs up, to slap that algorithm and YouTube in the face. Give us that like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. We're inching towards 3,300 subscribers. Let's try to get to that goal today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, Spotify, Apple Pods, rate, and review. I would be shocked if the Celtics don't play much better tonight. I'm not guaranteeing you a win, but I anticipate the Celtics to be locked in tonight. I especially expect them to be locked in defensively. I go back to the Miami series, Game 3 in Miami. That was some of the best defensive basketball I've seen this team play. They were on a string. They were communicating. They were contesting, high pickup points, ball pressure, all of those things. They were locked in against Miami. Game 3 down in Miami. And that's what I expect from the Celtics tonight. That kind of defensive effort, that kind of attention to detail. I expect higher pickup points. I expect more force and impact on the basketball. I expect them to do a much better job defensive rebounding, boxing out, finding Mavericks so you don't allow those offensive rebounds. I expect them to do that. And I expect them to win the 50-50 balls. They're going to be at home. The crowd should be absolutely electric and outrageous. And I think that will help energize this team. If the Celtics come out and look dead, that is an awful sign. I'm officially concerned if they look like they don't want to play this game in the first half. I would expect them to be shot out of a cannon and to play some of their best defense that we've seen. Offensively, I expect them to be more decisive. I expect more ball movement. I think their spacing will be better. I think we'll see less of Xavier Tillman tonight. You might see more of Sam Hauser, which defensively, he was abominable against Luka Doncic on Friday night. But in the name of offense and spacing, I think you'll see Hauser a little bit more tonight, and you won't see Tillman as much. And I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for the big three-point tsunami during a game. I still feel like the Celtics have one of those we made 23s type of games in them, and it could be tonight. But I'm waiting. They still have not had that, 41, 42% from three-point land, making 18 to 23s in a game. They still have not had that in this series. And they, frankly, have not shot the ball great throughout this postseason. So you feel like they've got one of those games in them. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's tonight. Dick Lipe, to make some people who are nervous, and I think many are nervous just because it's our nature, to make you feel a little less nervous, the Celtics in their finals history have lost 6 times by 20 or more points. Following those games, the Celtics are 5-1 in their history. Sean Grande, what do the last 3 Celtics championship teams have in common? That's 08, 86, and 84. All 3 lost a closeout game on the road, then came back to Boston to win the title in the next game. And as a matter of fact, the Celtics in 2008 won that championship against the Lakers on June 17th. A little freaky. I looked this up. Tatum and Brown in the playoffs. How do they react after losing by double digits? In the last 10 playoff games that Tatum and Brown have been healthy for, the last 10 playoff games after losing by 10 or more points, the Celtics are 7-3 with Tatum and Brown. Plus minus is a plus 75. The Celtics have won 4 straight. They have won 4 straight games in the playoffs after losing the prior game by 10 or more points. And all 4 of those games that they've won in a row have been at least by 9 points, if not more. I really like their chances. It's not impossible to believe the Mavericks can win this game tonight, of course. But I feel like the Celtics will play the right way. I think they'll defend. I think they'll play offense the right way. If they lose this game, it'll be one of 2 things. Dallas just plays great, Luka plays great, or the Celtics miss shots. That's how they lose this game tonight, because I do think they will walk into this game 100% ready. And I think they'll play the right way. I do not want to see the Celtics get back on a plane and go to Dallas. Don't want any of it. All right, we'll get to the Patriots in a minute. But I wanted to talk about a Kyrie quote just for a couple of minutes here because it jumped out at me. Jay King from Athletic posted on Twitter that Irving said he initially struggled in Boston with, quote, figuring out how I'm going to be a great player here while winning championships and also leading a team and selflessly joining the Celtics organization or the cult that they have here. The cult. He continued, that's what they expect you to do as a player. They expect you to seamlessly buy into the Celtics' pride, buy into everything Celtics, and if you don't, then you'll be outed. I'm one of the people that's on the outs. And he laughed. I'm perfectly fine with that. You know what I mean? I did it to myself. They don't welcome me with a warm embrace, even though I know a lot of people in the organization, and I'm friends still with some of them. Few things here from that Kyrie quote. And it's interesting because Kyrie has this interview with Fox Sports that's out today. He spoke with Ramona Shelburne. That's what we call the preemptive strike from Kyrie. He knows he was brutal the first 2 games here in Boston. So now he's trying to, quasi put the olive branch down on the table to Celtics fans in the organization by granting these one-on-ones with Fox Sports and with Ramona Shelburne. I can see right through it. It's so damn transparent. I just still don't believe Kyrie gets it. He's speaking to Fox Sports, and he talks about how his grandfather passed away, how it put him into a deep depression, and how that impacted his ability to lead the team when he was here in Boston. All of that is fine, and all of that is understandable. But then he doesn't talk about how he stomped on the Leprechaun logo years later, a couple of years after leaving the Celtics, has no explanation for that. He calls him a cult yesterday. He can't help himself. He's mercurial, as they say, right? And that's why they say he's mercurial. Because there'll be one sentence when Kyrie sounds thoughtful, sounds like he understands where he messed up in Boston, is taking accountability when he says, look, I did it to myself in that quote. He's taking accountability. But in the same quote, he's calling the organization a cult. He's trying to explain why he wasn't the leader back when they needed him to be a leader because of the passing of his grandfather and falling into a depression. But he mentions nothing of, stomping on the logo and some of the stuff that he did after he left the Celtics, flipping off the fans. Doesn't talk about any of that. Conveniently leaves that stuff out. And that's what you get with Kyrie. I remember I was working at 98.5 when Kyrie was a Celtic. I was doing the night show with Adam Jones. And teammates and people around the team, media, they would say you never knew which Kyrie you were getting from a day-to-day perspective. And of course, some of that, now you look at it in hindsight, could have been the depression, how he was personally dealing with stuff, for sure. But he's still the same kind of guy. He contradicts himself in the same quote. Constantly, he does this. He did it before the series when he was saying how he was grown and all of that, and that, it was, some of it was on him, yada, yada, yada. But then he would leave trails. He would leave a little bit of crumbs about how, not the whole story has come out yet. So he's just always back and forth in his brain. It's like Rick James, the Chappelle show, about stomping on another man's couch. That's what I think of Kyrie Irving when he's talking. He'll say one thing and then contradict it 2 minutes later. It's bananas. So I don't think he gets it. Like, he's calling the Celtics organization a cult. Why? Because they preach unselfishness, because they want to win, because they take pride in what they do, and they appreciate the history that they have. That's a cult. Not trying to brainwash you, Kyrie. And when you use the word cult, that's a lot of disdain, okay? You don't call something a cult unless you have complete disdain for that something. So no matter what Kyrie wants to say, and no matter how he tries to at times be thoughtful and take accountability, you drop the word cult on the Celtics. It's obvious that you don't like the team, you don't like the organization, you don't enjoy the fans, no matter what you say, because you just called the Celtics a cult. End of sentence. Period. Done. Over. There's no going back from that. That is hatred for the organization. And I'm glad he said he did it to himself, because that's a fact. He talks about, if you don't follow the cult, they're going to out you. No, Kyrie, you outed yourself, bro. You outed yourself. You did it to yourself. Nobody forced you to do some of the things that you did when you were here. Nobody forced you to do the things that you did after you left here. That's on you. Now, the guy who threw the bottle at TD Garden, knucklehead. We all know. Ridiculous, inexcusable. Guy needs to get a life. But Kyrie never fully takes accountability. Fully takes accountability for his missteps. I mean, he's trying to blame, the Celtics wanted me to be part of this cult, and I wasn't willing to be part of the cult. Did the Cavaliers want you to be part of a cult? Or was that on you, Kyrie, because you didn't want to be the little brother to LeBron James, and you wanted to be the 1A superstar of a team, and then you got to Boston and realized how difficult it was to be that 1A guy, and you crumbled under it? Were the Cavs a cult? Were the Brooklyn Nets a cult? Because you had issues in Cleveland and you had issues in Brooklyn. You isolated yourself almost immediately when you got to the Nets. So if this was just a Celtics thing, I'd understand it more. But the fact is, Kyrie, he ran out of chances up until he got to Dallas, because Mark Cuban was willing to take a swing because they desperately needed a star to put alongside Luka Doncic. And Dallas took the risk by making that trade and keeping him in Dallas. And Kyrie had to stay in Dallas because nobody else in the NBA wanted to pay him what Dallas was willing to pay him. And a lot of it had to do with Kyrie and his mercurial behavior. So you can sit there and you can spout off at the mouth how the Celtics were a cult and how that's why you were outed by the organization, but you can't overlook the fact that you had a history of your entire NBA career until the last few months when people want to rewrite your story to make it sound great. You were that guy. You were that guy in Cleveland, you were that guy in Boston, and you were that guy in Brooklyn. No matter if you had LeBron, if you had Tatum, if you had Durant, you were the guy. You were the common denominator. If you always have bad roommates, guess what? You're the bad roommate. You were the bad roommate. And until you take full responsibility for it, I'm not having it. That's it. Thumbs down. I'm not having it. You weren't mature enough to be the guy. And you never were mature enough to be the guy, which is why you always wanted another guy. You left Boston and went to Brooklyn. You did that by working with Kevin Durant in the tunnel at the All-Star game. It's funny how Kyrie doesn't bring that up during this interview with Fox Sports. How he was obviously working with Kevin Durant in February of the final season of his Celtics career, working with Durant to join forces. So what's that about? Were you trying to create your own cult, Kyrie? What was that about? You were going to Durant. You ran to Durant because you knew you couldn't be the guy. Fact. Just like you apologized to LeBron years later because you realized that LeBron was the guy and you couldn't be the guy. Just like how you have acquiesced to Luka Doncic because you understand that Luka is the guy because you can't be the guy. The one time in your career that you tried to be the guy, you couldn't be the guy. And you can find all the reasons in the world. But until you look in the mirror and you realize it and you say, it was on me. It's not on the Boston Celtics fans. It's not on the front office. It's not on trying to force me into this cult. It was on you. And you still haven't done that. You half measure. You get there halfway. Sometimes you get there 3/4 of the way. But you never fully get there. Because you're incapable of getting there, at least to this point. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. The likes, the thumbs up helps us here in the YouTube channel. If you like that Kyrie rant, give me that thumbs up. Don't forget to comment. Throw that in there as well. Subscribe is vitally important. So like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review Spotify, Apple Pods. All right, let's get to the Patriots. T. Higgins signed his franchise tender over the weekend. He is not expected to sign a long-term deal with Cincinnati. He will be at camp. It feels like the T. Higgins storyline is now dead and buried. And we know that Mike Brown of the Bengals, he's not, somebody who enjoys letting his players walk as far as when they're contractually obligated to be there via the rookie deal or a franchise tag. He doesn't like trading guys off of that situation. So from the very beginning, many people have said that the Bengals were not going to be looking to move on from T. Higgins this offseason. They were going to, wait this thing out and force T. Higgins' hand. And it worked because T. Higgins has decided to sign that franchise tender because he knows, okay, they're not going to trade me. If I don't play, they can kick this thing down the road. So that won't work out in my favor. So I've got to play. I've got to sign this thing, and I've got to play ball. And that's the NFL. The NFL owners have the vast majority of the power. Contractually, the team has you over a barrel. The way these contracts are structured, it's very difficult. The franchise tender, very difficult to run away from. So Higgins looks like he's going to be a Bengal in 2024. And he's just another wide receiver one. You could argue maybe not a one. Maybe he's a 1B. But another receiver that you could look at and say would be a number one for the Patriots, another name off the board. Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Devontae Smith, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, all of these guys off the board for different reasons. I think Brandon Ayuk is off the board. I do not think the 49ers are going to trade Ayuk. So when we talk about the Patriots not getting a number one receiver, we have to put the context out there and ask, who would be the guy that you're going to get? When I did the show on Memorial Day on 98.5 with Ryan Johnson and Kendra Middleton, Kendra and Ryan were frustrated that the Patriots didn't go out and get a wide receiver one. And my question to them was, who's the wide receiver one outside of Calvin Ridley? And we can debate that and go back and forth and say they should have given Ridley the money that he wanted. I was fine with them walking away from Calvin Ridley. He got like the fourth most guaranteed money at the wide receiver position. He's not a top 5 receiver in the game. I was okay from them walking away at a certain point. If you weren't, that's fine. I understand your side of it. But outside of Ridley, who's the number one receiver that was available? Nobody's been traded. All of these guys have stayed. So if you're not going to beef about Calvin Ridley, I don't know what your beef is against the Patriots about, they didn't get a number one. Tell me the number one that was there. And when you got to the draft, you had quarterback, tackle, and receiver to address. You were not going to be able to get a franchise quarterback and a wide receiver one in the draft. At least I don't think you were. So you picked Drake May at 3, which I thought was the right pick. Now you hope that Jalen Polk shows up and is at least a wide receiver 2, and that you hit on Javon Baker. But there was no solid, guaranteed number one guy out there to get. If Brandon Ayuk gets traded, we'll have the conversation. We'll say, well, the Patriots should have stepped up. They should have stepped up and offered what San Francisco wanted to bring in Ayuk. But until that happens, what are we arguing about? What are we going crazy about? There hasn't been a wide receiver one traded. But we think the Patriots could put a gun to the head of teams and say, give us your guy. And the fact that all these receivers, Evans, Pittman, Smith, Jefferson, Waddle, Higgins, all these guys are getting money. Amon-Ra St. Brown got money from Detroit, right? All of these guys. The NFL is valuing wide receivers right now at an all-time high. There has never been a moment, I don't think, there's never been a moment in NFL history where wide receivers are valued as high as they are right now. Guys are getting paid. Draft picks are going out there and getting drafted more than they've ever been at that position in the first couple of rounds. The NFL is valuing receivers, which means it's very difficult to envision a true top receiver to be gone. Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown. Those two guys, very fascinating deals. Kansas City survived because they have Patrick Mahomes. When you look at Tennessee, do you think Tennessee regrets trading A.J. Brown? I do. They had to go out and sign DeAndre Hopkins. They had to go out and sign Calvin Ridley to that contract. If they didn't trade A.J. Brown, they would have been able to have their number one receiver already locked up with no big deal. So it's going to become less and less a thing, I believe. It's going to become less and less of a thing when a wide receiver one gets traded. And those guys who do get traded, you got to look at age, you got to look at production, all of that stuff. So the NFL is valuing wide receivers at an all-time high. And it's because the emphasis on the passing game in college football, you see more spread out RPO action in college football than we've ever seen. And that's why you see offensive line play in decline, because teams are really relying on throwing the football, getting rid of the football quickly so their quarterback is not smashed by the pass rush. And so these offensive linemen, they don't have to pass protect for 3 seconds. It's snap the football, get rid of the football. It's getting rid of the football under 3 seconds all the time. That's what offense is now. It's more pitch and catch than ever. So offensive line play has been hurt by that. The emphasis on the pass game in college football, and it's also covering for some quarterback play at all levels. I know Tom Brady came out over the last few days and said, quarterback play is pretty much as bad as it's been for a while. I think you look directly at the college game and how offenses are calling plays and what their schemes are and what their approach is. And it's get rid of the football, quick, easy concepts, RPO concepts, less on the quarterback, get guys that can get open, spread out defenses. That's what it's all about. And so teams are looking around and they understand that the game is evolving, and they see a team like Miami with that cheat motion play last year, and now everybody's copying the cheat motion play, and now you're getting receivers that you can hopefully run that kind of play with. Although Tyreek Hill is so singularly talented at certain things versus other receivers in the game, but that's what's happening. That at all levels. But when you get to college, you're throwing the football more. You're not asking the quarterback to stay in the pocket as long as you used to. That hurts offensive line play. But it puts a big-time emphasis on wide receiver play, which is why you see all these wide receivers getting drafted in the last few years, and you're going to see more of them get drafted. It's like every year you've got 10 to 15 guys that are being talked about going in the first couple rounds, first 2.5 rounds. And it's because that's where the college game is pushing the pro game. And that's why you see all these big-time contracts now funneling in, from Justin Jefferson to Amon-Ra St. Brown to the Waddles to the Smiths, all of that. And I don't think it's going to stop. So there's been a sea change over the last few years. And wide receiver is almost as valuable as any position on the field, aside from quarterback, if you have a great quarterback. Which makes it much tougher to find that wide receiver one if you're a team like the Patriots and you need one. Which is why I still think the most likely path is drafting a guy. I don't know if it's going to be next year, but that's the most likely path, is that you draft that number one. All right, that'll do it for today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, rate, and review. Hopefully the Celtics get the job done tonight. I'm back tomorrow at 11 a.m. sharp. Thanks for watching. Thanks for participating in the chat, liking, commenting, subscribing, all those things. Can't say enough about all of you for the support and you investing your time. Back tomorrow at 11 a.m. It's the Nick Cattle Show.